Mr. Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, Mr. National Delegate of the Order of Liberation, Mr. Secretary General of Defense and National Security, Mr. General Delegate for the Armed Forces, Mr. Secretary General for Administration, Mr. Chiefs of Staff, Mr. Director of the National Gendarmerie, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, parliamentarians, Mr. Military Governor of Paris, ladies and gentlemen, officers generals, ladies and gentlemen, directors, officers, NCOs, Navy officers, Duran military personnel, sailors and aviators, disarmed civilian personnel, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the 9th time that I speak before you on the eve of our national holiday. You soldiers who, wherever you are deployed, acted to ensure the protection of the French, the defense of our interests, and the respect of the word given. You who are the armed arm of France and whose commitment bears the greatness and acceptance of the risk. I will later salute the memory of our fallen soldiers this year. I will also see our wounded earlier and tomorrow. And I want to say here to their families, to their brothers in arms, the entire support and recognition of the nation, our recognition and our affection. Your commitment is priceless. It is all the more so because we are living a turning point. We have long seen the imminence of this turning point, and these turning points are now effective. And undoubtedly never since 1945, freedom had been so threatened, and never to this extent had peace on our continent depended on our current decisions. Yes, we are diving back into years when history repeats itself. And on this occasion, I would like to, on this July 13th, 2025, thank the Liberation Mission, chaired by Philippe Etienne, which will complete its work by the end of the year, and to commemorate the 2 years that we have just lived through commemorations, the scientific, academic, and memorial work, and the mobilization of so many of our former fighters and veterans. As I thank all our former fighters, our associations of former fighters and of memory, which everywhere on the national territory carry this collective memory, remind us of the strength of this history, and are also the foundation of the memory of the nation. As I said, undoubtedly never our freedom had been so threatened. Freedom of the peoples attacked by imperialism and annexation powers. Freedom slandered when the rules of war are erased, when everyone exonerates himself of international law, when the hope of peace is annihilated in Europe, the Middle East, and in Africa. And when there are no more rules, it is the law of the strongest that wins. Freedom of our Europe put at risk when the war was waged on our soil with the invasion of Ukraine, when the United States added a form of uncertainty, and when our Europe is placed on the brink of a vast arc of crisis, which starts from the Gulf of Guinea, crosses the Sahel to the Middle East and Iran. Let us be clear. We Europeans must now ensure our own security. Freedom of our economic model, too, when companies imagine becoming states, states becoming empires, and when lands are confiscated, resources seized, or global trade captured. Freedom of our democratic and political model, object of attempts of manipulation by foreign states, especially on social networks, and target of obscurantist forces. Individual freedom also because in the age of screens it is the spirit of men, in particular of young generations, which becomes the front line of the economic, technological, and cultural war. Freedom of the nation. Finally, when the risks of division threaten our unity, and we must face so many challenges to remain free, masters of our destiny. So, in the face of all these risks that weigh on our freedom, we initiated last January a State of the Environment and Future Challenges. This work is now complete, and the National Strategic Review, which was piloted by the SGDSN, and to which many of you, and I thank you, have largely contributed, will be published tomorrow. This journal makes a clear and precise diagnosis: a de-inhibition of the use of force with an increased violence that is not always state-sponsored and which does not always target belligerents. The particular threat that terrorism represents, and singularly Islamist terrorism, and 10 years after the Paris attacks, if in a decade we have done a lot, the risk is still there. A question of solidarity and an erasure of the frameworks that were defined after the Second World War. The increasing hybridity of conflicts, which blurs all the threshold effects. The permanence of a Russian threat at the borders of Europe, from the Caucasus to the Arctic. A prepared, organized, durable threat, and to which we must be able to face. Our European future is determined by this, and the need to organize ourselves to respond to this threat, and to dissuade it, to maintain peace. The technological race, which is played in parallel with the eruption of artificial intelligence, the emergence of drones, the return of the electronic war, new spaces of confrontation which are space, cyber, or naval bases. But also the quantum turn, which has already begun and on which we have many assets. So many revolutions accelerated by the battlefields, where the need to survive and adapt demultiplies engineering and ingenuity. A war that every citizen observes on social networks, in particular our youth, without measuring the propaganda operations that unfold there. Our patterns will have to change profoundly to integrate these realities. These threats and what they define describe very well our national strategic review. You are directly confronted with it. When engaged within NATO on its eastern flank, you witness the violations of sovereignty and attempts at hybrid destabilization, the threats on the elections and the stability of European countries. You are confronted with it in the Red Sea. I saw it again on your side a few months ago at Christmas in Djibouti, where our sailors and aviators shoot down missiles and drones and are guaranteed freedom of navigation. And in Africa, too, where terrorist groups take over civil populations. You are confronted with it in the Middle East, where under your eyes taboos are transgressed, the unthinkable sometimes happens, and where you respond now to defend partner countries or evacuate our outposts. And I salute here our armed forces integrated in Afanol in Lebanon, as the role that we play directly in the tracking mechanism in the south of the same country. You are confronted with it on the national territory and in particular in our outskirts, placed at the forefront of new areas of conflict. Yes, our ultramarine territories are increasingly, and the military programming law has well identified it, territories that will be tested and where destabilization forces come to destabilize us today. You are confronted with these threats and their evolution, not as spectators but as actors at the forefront in this changing world, and everything can indeed happen. These last years have been marked by the return of the unthinkable. And look again at these last months, the acceleration of events, the bombings on Iran, the fights between India and Pakistan, with undoubtedly one of the air fights of the greatest intensity of the last decades, the attacks and American support for Ukraine, the trade war between allies in this same context. Yes, we are witnessing the return of the nuclear fact, of the proliferation of major conflicts. Because the nation is confronted with all these hybrid threats, with this acceleration of history, there is no more back, and there is no more front. Conflicts are multiform, multi-layered, and supposed density. They are supposed to harden our capacities, our forces, and the nation as a whole. And I say it here in front of you, we will get there. We will not only get there because we will be better armed, but because we are lucid and united as we have been for 9 years. Because we have anticipated this transformation of the world anticipated the essential investments. And in this regard, it is not enough to first aim for percentages of budget, but to aim for what elevates us and unites us, a force of soul, a determination, as I mentioned here, right next to you 3 years ago. And deep down, let's be simple. To be free in this world, you have to be afraid. To be afraid, you have to be powerful. The nation, for this, must be stronger. Because it is up to the nation above all to defend the nation. This is done first through a better awareness of each Frenchman and of all the civil actors of the hybrid threats that surround us. I want to thank General Burkhardt for his speech 2 days ago at my request, who contributed to it. Interministerial mobilization is also essential to national defense. Everyone must be in their place of combat. Efforts have been made and must continue. Under the authority of the Prime Minister, we will continue, in each ministry, in each field, these efforts. At the international level, and I am thinking of the Sidorse and the work of influence, a dedicated organization, strengthened means, a more offensive stance have been decided and will be maintained in the long term. I am also thinking of what has been done in Annecy, in Virginium, which protects the French from cyberattacks and interference. I am thinking of our external and internal. But I am also thinking of the essential surciau, which is demanded, organized, and which will continue to be strengthened in our companies, our territorial collectivities, our research laboratories, and our most sensitive but also sometimes the least expected. Because it is there sometimes that our vulnerabilities, it is there too that we must harden our stance. We need to be prepared. We can do it too because we are concerned that our armies serve in the right conditions. That is why I have watched the military condition carried out by your leaders and enlightened by the High Committee for the evaluation of the military condition. The general status of the military is a strength for our defense. The military condition engages the nation, maintains a moral strength, essential principles, and the recognition of your condition is also your remuneration. I have asked in this regard, their level up in what was planned by the military programming law will be, in the next hour, in the next month, done. This is done for the rank-and-file military and for the NCOs. This will be done completely by the end of the year for the NCOs. The military condition also implies the solidarity of the nation when it is needed. The wounded plan and the family plan have been put in place. It was essential. I know I measure everything that remains to be done in certain bases to improve everyday life and quality of life, and we will do it. And I thank the Minister Delegate, dear Patricia Morales, for all the improvements that I wish to see continued. I also think of the attention necessary to the employment of military partners and to the proposals made in this direction by the NCO. The military condition is also the attention to the conditions of the implementation of your missions, the attention to the organization and the mode of operation. You have the duty to act when nothing works in the middle of chaos. You are, in this regard, the last barrier. This requires agility, flexibility, subsidiarity, and the ability to initiate. However, the drift during the years of defense spending has sometimes to compromising these essential principles. So, at this turning point, I expect the Ministry of the Armed Forces and the Prime Minister and the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces to make me for the end of the year, and I thank them. This is so that the functioning of the ministry and the armed forces continues to be reformed, that levers are given back to the military leaders to carry out the missions that I can be brought to you to entrust, but also to the engineers, to the technicians, to the agents of the ministry so that they innovate and support the rapid development of our military capabilities. We will succeed if we take the measure of the turning point to engage. This is why, since 2017, I have decided to make defense a priority. We had to give back to France a solid, complete, sovereign defense. Programming laws have been carried out scrupulously, which is unprecedented. The effort that this represents is essential in the face of all challenges, and in almost 10 years we have repaired, modernized, innovated with the implementation of military programming laws, and I thank the Minister of the Armed Forces, dear Sébastien Lecornu, for the energy he devotes to this essential subject for France. I join in his thanks Mrs. Florence Parley, who brought this to my side during the previous quinquennat. We will finally, if we know how to find new ways of operating. We have already revised our tools and we have new instruments. The new space operations that I inaugurated this fall in Toulouse is an example. We have also revised our strategic doctrine. I think in particular of the new approach developed with the African countries. We had to lay the foundations of a partnership that met our respective expectations, and you have implemented it with a lot of efficiency. It remains that these profound do not exhaust all the challenges that are posed. At the time of the predators, none can remain immobile. We haven't advanced, but tomorrow at the same pace we would be overtaken. I had announced last March 5 to the French the need to make historical decisions in the face of the existential threats that weigh on our freedom and that I have just recalled. These decisions are essential in my eyes to guarantee our security and our independence. And while our American ally shows a desire for disengagement or creates for us as an ally new uncertainties, we want once and for all to take our security and that of the continent in hand and build a real European pillar of NATO. Are we able to offer an outcome to this formidable desire for commitment and achievement that drives our youth? Are we able especially to resist in the event of a conflict of high intensity on European soil in the next 3 to 4 years? To all these questions we will answer yes, because we French intend to remain free in the coming century. To have this power to say yes, the nation must be faithful to the teaching of Clemenceau and apply his maxim. We must know what we want when we know it. We must have the courage to say it when we say it. We must have the courage to do it. Also, the time has come to draw all the conclusions of what we know. And it is my responsibility as President of the Republic, Chief of the Armies. It goes first by the execution of some of the decisions already taken. It is necessary that the credits planned are available to the Euroloan. Consistency is essential because our strategy has been the right one for 9 years. The one of the independence of France and the sovereignty of Europe. We started the efforts earlier. We have seen earlier these new threats, so we must with consistency continue to do what has been decided. As the Minister announced this morning, thanks to the decisions of the Prime Minister, I thank him. The defrosting of the credits will be carried out. I know our SMEs and our industrialists have suffered the delays caused by the censorship voted by the parliamentarians last December. So I say it here to everyone to take responsibility for next year. To the parliamentarians, so that the budget is voted on time, because the censorship at the end of the year has a simple consequence. It shifts the budget of the armies, among others. To the government, then, to proceed in time and on time to the decided credits. To the large groups of the sector to give visibility necessary to their subcontractors, and I count on them. And to investors and the financial sector to continue to support these companies. It is necessary as such to continue the effort we have undertaken these last 3 years, to be able to continue to innovate faster, to produce new mass, to adapt to demand, and to put private financing back to the base industrial and technological defense. These changes operated since 2022 must be strengthened, intensified again. Secondly, we must question the sufficiency of the effort consented by the two LPMs. We must fill our areas of fragility. It is all the work that has been done these last weeks by the Minister of the Armed Forces, the CIMA, and the DGA. Fill our areas of fragility, and first of all our ammunition stocks whose ammunition is teleoperated. Strengthen our saturation weapons and our precision weapons. Provide us with drones for our combat groups, our frigates, and our air bases even more, and the equipment necessary on a daily basis for the operations to be carried out. Strengthen our air defense and our means of electronic warfare. Increase our space capabilities. Push to the maximum the training of soldiers, sailors, aviators. Develop even more the reserve determined by its increase in 2022, but that we still need to intensify. We have strong armies, but above all what I have just named, we must strengthen the model and also gain in mass. Such are the areas of effort that have been identified and which will be the areas of priority in the additional efforts to the current military programming law. The war in Ukraine demonstrates that to hold it takes bravery but also stock and an industry of adapted defense. It takes a nation capable of holding to be mobilized. This is also why we must accelerate the efforts on our reserve. And I also believe that we must give the youth a new framework to serve according to other modalities within our armies. I will give my guidelines and my decisions in this direction in the fall, on the basis of the work requested last January to the ministers in the CIMA, returning on the future of the SNU, the organization, the mobilization of our youth as well as our reserves. Thirdly, this new era for the nation involves new budgets for our armies. In conscience, we assume to carry a new and historical framework. The first program law launched during the previous quinquennat allowed to repair. The second is a law of projection which anticipated the shifts of the world, but these shifts intervened faster than expected. While we had planned to double the budget by 2030, we will double it by 2027. At this end, an update of the military program law will be presented in the fall, which will anticipate the effort we will have to carry until 2027 under my responsibility, and I call on national responsibility. The armies in 2017 was 32 billion euros. It will, to the current program law, an effort of 3.5 billion euros in 2026 and 3 billion euros additional the following year. We will therefore devote 64 billion euros for our defense in 2027. It is the double of the budget the armies had in 2017. This new historic effort is proportioned. It is credible. It is essential. It is just what we need, but really what we need. How to finance it? The First Minister will announce it on July 15th afternoon, and I want to thank him for his work, and on his side with all the ministers who mobilized him. In any case, we refuse that this rearmament goes through the debt. Our military is inseparable from our financial. It will therefore be financed by more activity and more production. The effort of the whole nation for the defense of all the French. I said on March 5th to the French, the homeland needs you. I tell you on this national holiday, it is now. Now, we have to consent to this effort because we have worked documented and it is precisely calibrated. A punctual of all to preserve our security and our independence. The salvation of the homeland means that we spend more for our defense and that everyone takes his share of this investment, and that we look at the financial sovereignty of our nation, which goes through reforms, transformations, and more production. If our freedom has a price, here it is. We are this generation who did not know the war, determined that our children know nothing but peace. But let's be lucid. We no longer have the dividends of peace and our parents had benefited. It's over. This effort will not be bloodthirsty for the nation, and military are and will also be sources of wealth for our gross domestic product, our economy, and our territories. Because this effort will also have to be that of our industrialists, and I know it is their motivation, their credo, but they will have to carry alongside our armies this patriotism. They will have to produce even more faster at a lower cost. The DGA will strictly, and they will also continue to privilege our territories for new capacity sites of new production, as we saw together a few months ago, still in Bergerac. It is thanks to this effort that we can affirm with pride, with lucidity, with confidence, that we will get there. Yes, we will get there, because this budget surplus will also allow us to move forward with our partners. Our strength is superior when it is collective, and it is the very meaning of the commitment taken at the summit of the NATO in La Haye on June 25th, last coming to pursue the awareness of the summit of Versailles in 2022. We must do more for our defense. We must do more on the military, industrial, and technological level. In order as Europeans to be more sovereign, it is this effort that will allow us to ensure our credibility in front of our partners, to have still and always the most effective army in Europe, to forge new partnerships like this week with the United Kingdom, after the declaration of Northwood that we have just signed Germany, and the United Kingdom will meet in a few days, and we will find our German partners at the end of August for a Franco-German defense and security, where we will have new decisions to make. Let's build with our main partners. Let's act as Europeans, because we face the same threat, starting with the Russian threat. But our investments combined to strengthen will allow us to build this European pillar of NATO that France has announced and wanted before so many others remember. 9 years ago, it was a big word. A few years ago, it was impossible to defend it. And to have it supported by others now, it has become a credo. They all joined us, but it's up to us to make it a reality and to act together. Facing this same threat, we must act together, produce together, buy together. This is the meaning of the safe security for Europe adopted a month and a half ago by the European Council, and that will allow with 150 billion euros to finance joint purchases of military equipment. We must imperatively implement them. And we have, for that assets, our industrialists have assets. We have capacities that are at the point of international excellence and must become European solutions. The air defense system, SAM-ITE new generation, our missiles in all ranges, our rockets, the first satellite constellations in low orbit, our artificial intelligence, our radar and anti-drone. And I go on these solutions, this cutting edge. We have it, we often already produce it in partnership with several other major European, or by our groups who already have a footprint in a European, so. Let's buy European weapons en masse. Despite American and facing the Chinese will facing the Russian threat. The European power is our best shield, a Europe capable of innovating and producing on its soil. It is a Europe that will be more sovereign and will master its destiny, will assume its power. And let's get out of the old. Ridiculous. This does not take away anything from independence and French sovereignty. It reinforces it believes because we have not given anything in advance of our sovereignty and our independence, on the contrary. But having allies whose armies work with us, operate with us, having industrialists everywhere in Europe who produce with us by pushing our European partners to buy with us. Our materials, we reinforce, in fact, our sovereignty and our independence. Everywhere in Europe, the strength of France is expected. And in our dangerous and uncertain world, it is a pillar of our security that will not falter. It is our nuclear dissuasion totally and invariably sovereign. Guarantees our freedom. It also has a role in the security of Europe. I reaffirmed it with the British Prime Minister this week. There is no extreme threat against Europe which would not be enough for the response of our two nations. In order to fully understand the role of our dissuasion and collective security, I mandated the Minister of the Armed Forces and the CIMA to engage in a strategic dialogue with our European partners who are ready. I will come back on the basis of this work more precisely at the end of this year, in order to describe the evolutions that this brings our country, the only of the European Union endowed with nuclear dissuasion. Strong, the strength of this renewed with the United Kingdom also has a major responsibility for the conventional rearmament of our Europe to be effective, credible, and coherent. All this is a whole everywhere. In Europe, nations rearm, and France cannot leave its European allies in the front in the face of very short term. Everywhere in Europe,
afin de décrire les évolutions que cela emporte. Notre pays.
Strength of France is expected, and everywhere in the world, freedom is threatened. Then let's defend it. Let's defend it in Ukraine, because our security, our freedom are linked to the destiny of this country. This is the reason for which, with the British partner, France has grouped a coalition of voluntary countries in order to contribute to sustainably guarantee the peace necessary on our continent. This coalition of volunteers, initiated in Paris last February, now groups 30 nations. Its operational is constituted and based in Paris. This is a first, but it is the very meaning of what we want to do, the very meaning of a part of the efforts, capacitary and operational, that we are leading, which has the vocation to make France the nation framework of future operations. Let's defend our freedom in Europe, all nations. I think in particular to our Finnish friends, committed to our side in Lebanon and who see with apprehension the clouds accumulating on the horizon. Let's defend our freedom for our youth. This youth whose faces you are, who want to serve, believe, hope, and thirst more than anything. An immense freedom. Let's defend our freedom in all areas, as I have just mentioned, without forgetting that of cognitive new frontiers which is in front of us, and that we will have to integrate both our populations and our armies will be confronted with manipulated information propaganda to unmask, and on which we have to prepare. Let's defend our freedom as are ready to defend it. Generation after generation, these women and these men who respond to the call of the flag, like the girl who used to be a Saint-Cyrien of the cadet. Promotion of Free France, the general of the army, Thierry Burkhard, whom I salute and thank today. My general, you have my confidence and my recognition for your action on my side, at the head of the French armies through you. I salute patriotism and the sense of responsibility of all those who make the choice of the armies to defend freedom. Let's defend this freedom alongside the great nations who are there, our European partners, our allies, but also these nations from further away, like Indonesia, invited on July 14th, who hear in Indo-Pacific the logic of the blocs and the law of imperialism. Like us, let's defend our freedom. And on this day of July 14th, let's be faithful to the people of the revolution, who claimed its greatness and the universal freedom of the peoples. Let's defend our armies who defend our freedom. Let's be on their side at the back, ready for all the commitments, all the fights, like Every day these women and these men are ready for the ultimate sacrifice for the nation. So tomorrow, I will be on your side once again, with recognition, with confidence, and with pride, like since the first day, because I know how much it is this commitment, this acceptance of the sacrifice. And until the ultimate sacrifice, which makes the strength of our armies, the strength of our nation tomorrow, I will be on your side once again with the same pride. Long live the Republic, and long live France.